1978, Karak Boulevard. When the police found the body on the roof of a yellow Volkswagen, 5 deep finger holes reached the bone in the victim's abdomen. The officer, trembling, ordered, "Don't turn around," because at that moment, the victim's head was being pressed against the roof by a white-clad, blue-faced creature being devoured like wild flesh. This is not a legend, this is a blocked waveform.
Welcome to glitch frequency. We don't record facts, we only capture those abnormal fluctuations filtered out by reality. When you tune into this frequency, it means you have crossed the boundary of logic. Please make sure the doors and windows behind you are locked, because the noise that follows may invade your reality.
Okay, let's unpack this, because what we are attempting to do today really requires you to, well, completely dismantle your standard operating assumptions about how the physical world works.
Right.
I mean, I want you to imagine the sheer volume of data sitting in front of us right now for this frequency.
It's massive.
It really is. We are pulling from these deeply buried archives of 1970s Malaysian news reports. We're translating these hyper-niche, obscure paranormal blogs, places like Azika Online and Spooky Corner.
Think about deep cuts.
Exactly. We've spent weeks cross-referencing translated YouTube transcripts from local urban explorers, checking those against user-submitted testimonies from Wattpad, and, we are even stacking all of that against ancient, esoteric, mythological texts.
Which is a huge undertaking.
So our mission for this deep dive is singular. We're going to put the most infamous, the most psychologically terrifying urban legend in all of Southeast Asia under an investigative microscope.
The headless ghost of the Karak Highway.
Yes. We're going to strip away the campfire story embellishments, right? Look at the raw data, analyze the terrifying anomalies surrounding the event, and really determine if this is just a cultural coping mechanism or if we are looking at a genuine geographical glitch in the fabric of reality itself.
And that requires a very specific type of listening, I think. We're looking for the seams.
Right, the seams.
The points where human memory contradicts the physical evidence and where the physical evidence just, completely defies biological law.
Exactly. So I need you, the listener, to prepare yourself. If you are in a safe place, turn off the lights. Let your eyes adjust to the darkness. Because before we can dissect the glitch, you need to feel the raw, unfiltered baseline narrative. You need to understand the absolute dread of what supposedly happened on that winding mountain road. So I'm going to walk you through the timeline of the primary event, and I need you to immerse yourself completely.
Okay.
Every glitch has a point of origin, right? A catalyst that begins the waveform distortion. Here, that catalyst is the Genting Highlands.
Right.
I want you to visualize this place in the late 1970s. You are in Malaysia, an Islamic country where gambling is strictly legally forbidden by religious doctrine.
Yeah.
Yet piercing through the dense tropical cloud cover, sitting literally 1,800 meters above sea level, is this towering monument to vice.
It's quite an image.
Genting is Asia's second largest casino, a massive entertainment hub built on the absolute peak of a remote mountain. It is a geographical and cultural anomaly, completely isolated from the rest of the world by incredibly steep, treacherous jungle roads that carve through this ancient, unforgiving rainforest.
Wow.
It is into this anomaly that a young married couple decides to venture. They are described in the source texts as deeply in love, just ordinary people.
Normal folks.
Yeah, the wife has never been to Genting. For her, it is a mythical place, a city of glittering lights in the clouds, full of endless buffets, dizzying architecture, and, the intoxicating, dangerous thrill of the casino floor.
Naturally.
She pleads with her husband to take her. The husband is consistently described in the lore as an inherently good, honest man, and he initially resists the idea.
Really?
Yeah, he feels a visceral, inexplicable reluctance to go up that mountain. But human nature and a desire to make his pregnant wife happy ultimately wins out. He has recently come into a substantial amount of cash, like a sudden windfall, and he agrees to fund the trip. When they arrive at the peak, the atmosphere is electric. The air is thin, cold, and crackling with artificial energy. They check into their hotel room, and immediately the environment seems to interact with them.
How so?
The sources note a highly specific, deeply unsettling detail. The wind chimes hanging from the ceiling of their room.
Oh, right.
The windows are sealed shut against the mountain chill. The air conditioning is just a low, steady hum, yet the chimes sway.
That's creepy.
They clink together, and the couple swears they can hear faint, metallic whispers bleeding through the chimes, murmuring, "You have good luck. You should play. The mountain welcomes you."
Just entirely unnatural.
Emboldened by the atmosphere and this unnatural surge of vitality, they head down to the casino floor. and the whispers were right. For the first few hours, they experience a run of luck that defies all statistical probability.
A total rush.
It is a pure, unadulterated dopamine rush.
Yeah.
Whatever game they approach, they dominate. They place chips on the roulette table, and the ball drops exactly where they need it. The card hands they are dealt are mathematically flawless. Within a few short hours, they have accumulated a literal mountain of chips.
That never happens.
The husband, wearing a crisp, bright white button-down shirt, is glowing with triumph. The wife is euphoric. They are completely untouchable.
But it doesn't last.
But then, the frequency violently shifts. The clock strikes midnight.
Of course.
The sources are unanimous about this turning point. The energy in the casino doesn't just naturally ebb, it sharply and aggressively reverses.
Right.
The impossible luck they had been riding evaporates into thin air. Suddenly, every single bet they place is a catastrophic, mathematically crushing loss.
Ouch.
The mountain of chips begins to vanish, sliding across the green, felt into the dealer's tray in massive, rapid sweeps. But they cannot walk away.
They're hooked.
They are caught in a compulsive, manic, artificially induced loop, doubling down, desperately chasing the high of the early evening. Within a matter of hours, the devastation is absolute. They lose everything. They lose the massive winnings. They lose the original windfall they brought with them. They even lose the cash they had carefully set aside to pay for the hotel room they are supposed to sleep in.
That's brutal.
Ashamed, utterly exhausted, and completely stripped of their resources, they realize they cannot even afford to go back upstairs to their bed. They are forced to flee the mountain.
In the dark.
In the dead of night, swallowed by the heavy, suffocating darkness of the high altitude, they climb into their car, a bright yellow Volkswagen Beetle, and begin the long, winding, treacherous descent back toward Kuala Lumpur.
Okay.
It is now roughly 2 or 3 in the morning. They are navigating the Karak Highway. You must understand the isolation of this road in the 1970s.
It wasn't like today.
Not at all. This was not a modern, illuminated expressway. It was a dark, narrow ribbon of twisting asphalt, choked on both sides by an impenetrable wall of ancient tropical rainforest.
Pitch black.
There are no streetlights, no emergency call boxes. The only illumination in the world is the sweeping beam of their headlights cutting through the thick, swirling mountain mist.
Terrifying.
The silence inside the yellow Volkswagen is heavy, crushing them with the weight of their total financial ruin.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the car jerks, the engine sputters, lets out a horrific metallic grinding noise, and completely dies.
God.
The husband frantically turns the key, nothing but the hollow click of a dead ignition. He looks down at the dashboard in sheer, uncomprehending disbelief.
Let me guess.
The fuel gauge is resting dead on empty, but he knows, he is absolutely mathematically certain that he had the car fully serviced and the tank topped off before they began the descent.
That's impossible.
It is physically impossible for the tank to be empty.
Yeah.
Yet the engine is dead, the headlights dim and fade. They are stranded on the side of the Karak Highway, entirely consumed by the pitch black night.
Just the worst nightmare scenario.
The husband, still wearing that crisp white shirt, realizes the grim reality of their situation. There are no mobile phones in this era. They are miles from any form of civilization. He has no choice but to seek help on foot.
He's going out there.
He looks at his pregnant wife, his face pale in the moonlight, and tells her he is going to walk down the dark highway to find a phone booth or a gas station.
Wow.
He gives her one absolute, uncompromising instruction: lock the doors, roll up the windows, and absolutely do not get out of this car no matter what happens until I return.
John.
He steps out of the yellow Volkswagen. The heavy, humid, insect-loud air of the jungle rushes into the cabin for a second before he slams the door shut. She watches him walk away, his white shirt glowing faintly in the mist for just a few moments before he is completely swallowed by the shadows of the Karak Highway.
Alone.
And now, the true psychological horror begins. The waiting. The wife is left entirely alone in a metal box. The silence of the car is oppressive, contrasting violently with the relentless, chaotic cacophony of the jungle outside. The chirping of insects, the rustling of unseen things in the canopy.
It messes with your head.
The sound stretches time. Minutes elongate into agonizing hours. She sits there, locked in, staring into the impenetrable blackness, praying to see the distant glow of headlights, praying to see her husband's silhouette emerging from the mist.
Exhausting.
Eventually, the sheer physiological exhaustion of the emotional roller coaster at the casino catches up to her. Despite her paralyzing terror, her eyelids grow heavy. She drifts into a restless, fragmented sleep.
Oh, no.
She doesn't know how much time has passed when she is violently jolted awake.
What is it?
It isn't a voice. It isn't the sound of an approaching engine. It is a physical, heavy impact.
Like,
Thump. Thump.
God.
The sound is coming from directly above her head, from the metal roof of the car. It is irregular, heavy, and wet. She freezes, her breath catching in her throat, her eyes darting upward in the darkness.
Panic sets in.
She tries desperately to rationalize it. It's just a heavy branch falling from the jungle canopy, she tells herself. It's the beginning of a heavy tropical downpour.
You have to tell yourself something.
But the sound doesn't stop, and it changes. Layered beneath the heavy thumping is a new, sickening audio frequency. It sounds like hard enamel scraping against steel. It sounds like the wet, violent tearing of thick fabric and dense muscle. It sounds like the frantic, animalistic grinding of massive teeth against bone.
That's horrifying.
She looks up at the roof, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, and then her eyes drift to the window. In the pale, faint moonlight filtering through the dense leaves, she sees a thick, dark liquid slowly oozing down the outside of the glass.
No.
It isn't rainwater. It is warm, viscous, and red. Fresh blood is flowing in heavy streaks down the windows of the yellow Volkswagen.
Absolutely terrifying.
Occasionally, a vehicle approaches on the highway. She sees the distant, promising glow of headlights. Hope flares in her chest. She prepares to flash her high beams, to lean on the horn, to scream for her life. Please stop.
But every single time a car approaches her vehicle, the driver seemingly spouts something in their high beams, slams on the accelerator, and flees into the night in a state of absolute blind panic. They leave her behind.
They see it.
She is trapped in an agonizing purgatory of terror. The blood dripping, the heavy thump of whatever is on the roof, shaking the entire chassis of the small car.
Just waiting to die.
Finally, as the sky just barely begins to lighten with the first cold gray hint of false dawn, a police patrol car approaches. It doesn't speed past, but it doesn't pull up right behind her either.
Right.
It stops at a very safe, deliberate distance away. Its red and blue lights paint the surrounding jungle canopy in erratic, strobe-like flashes.
They know something is wrong.
An officer steps out. He does not approach her car. Instead, he draws his service weapon. He raises a megaphone to his mouth, and even through the electronic distortion, his voice is trembling with an unmistakable raw panic.
You in the vehicle. The megaphone crackles. Open your door, step out of the car and walk toward my voice. Do exactly as I say and absolutely do not look back.
Don't look back.
The wife, operating purely on adrenaline and primal survival instinct, unlocks the door. She steps out into the cool morning air. She fixes her eyes entirely on the police officer standing by his cruiser, his gun pointed not at her but elevated, aimed at the space directly above her vehicle. She begins to run.
Run.
Do not look back. The officer screams again, his voice breaking.
Oh, God.
She runs toward the safety of the police cruiser. She reaches the open door. The officers grab her, ready to throw her into the back seat and speed away. But in that final, fatal microsecond, human curiosity overpowers the instinct to obey.
She looks.
As she's being pulled into the police car, she turns her head. She looks through the rearview mirror, back at her yellow Volkswagen.
No.
Crouching on the blood-slicked roof of her car is a creature. It is roughly female in shape, clad in a tattered, filth-soaked white dress. Its skin is a sickening, luminous, necrotic blue.
Terrifying.
Its face is contorted in a mask of feral, predatory rage, boasting long, terrifying fangs.
Right.
And in its hands, it holds her husband's severed, mangled head.
God.
The creature is violently slamming the head against the metal roof of the car, thump, 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 devouring the ripped flesh, completely ignoring the flashing police lights, lost in a frenzy of absolute horrific carnage.
Just a total nightmare.
The police speed away, their tires screaming on the asphalt, leaving the nightmare behind in the mist. The next day, when heavily armed tactical units return to the scene in the full light of day, they find the husband's headless body lying deep in the jungle 200 meters away from the car.
Right.
His abdomen has been ripped open to the bone, marked by 5 impossibly deep finger holes.
The story is very tense, but frequency misalignment is about those hidden bad chunks. Hey, you're talking about the result, but I have several completely different origin waveforms.
I just need a second to let that breathe. Honestly, stepping out of that narrative is like coming up for air. The sheer claustrophobia of sitting in that car while the blood rolls down the window, it's visceral.
Absolutely. It's a deeply traumatic scene to visualize.
But you're right, we have to detach the horrific scene I just painted, the result, the symptom of the glitch, What is the underlying disease causing it? Where did this thing come from?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the deepest source materials don't just present a random monster in the woods. They present a complex, deeply ingrained web of causality.
Okay, let's unpack this.
The attempt to answer the most terrifying question in any tragedy, right? Why them? Why this couple? Let's look at Origin Hypothesis 1, which the translated forums refer to as the causal debt or the accountant theory.
The accountant theory. That sounds so mundane for something so brutal.
I know, but according to archives pulled from Wattpad and regional folklore boards, the grieving wife, entirely shattered by the event, eventually sought the counsel of a high-ranking Buddhist monk. She needed to understand why her perfectly normal, honest, loving husband suffered such a targeted, horrific fate.
Right, because that's the sticking point for me. In every iteration of the lore we research, the husband is explicitly framed as a good guy.
Exactly, he's just a normal guy.
He wasn't a criminal, he wasn't involved in the occult, so why was he hunted?
Well, the monk reveals a hidden variable in the timeline. He asks the wife if her husband had recently come into a windfall, a sudden, unearned, large sum of money.
And he had, right, to pay for the trip.
Exactly. The wife confirms he did, but she assumed it was a legitimate payout from his rubber plantation business. The monk corrects her. That money didn't come from a business deal.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it was found money, and it belonged to a desperate female accountant.
So what does this all mean? How does a corporate accountant factor into a blue-faced monster tearing a man apart on a car roof? What is the mechanical link there?
It's a story of ultimate, suffocating desperation. Years prior to the highway incident, this accountant found herself in an impossible personal situation and made a fatal error. She embezzled a massive amount of public funds from her company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Realizing she was facing imminent audits, discovery, and complete ruin, she hatched a desperate, flawed plan. She took the remaining public funds, combined them with her entire life savings, and intended to travel up to the Genting casino.
To gamble it back.
Exactly. Her logic, warped by panic, was that she could hit a massive streak, replace the embezzled funds before the audit, and walk away clean.
But she never actually makes it to the tables, does she?
No, she doesn't. On her way up the winding roads to Genting, she loses the bag containing the money. The source texts are ambiguous, implying it was either dropped during a stop, misplaced, or, more sinisterly, opportunistically stolen by someone who saw her leave it unattended.
That's someone being the husband.
Precisely. She reports the missing money to the local police station, situated near the base of the mountain. She waits in the lobby for days, completely distraught, hoping a good Samaritan will turn it in.
Which is never going to happen.
Right. As the desk officer gently informs her, an untraceable pile of cash found on a mountain road leading directly to Asia's largest casino is never, ever coming back.
Imagine the psychological collapse in that moment. The realization that you haven't just lost your savings, you are definitely going to prison.
It breaks her completely. Realizing her life is effectively over, she walks out of the police station, ascends the Genting Highlands alone, finds a steep cliff edge overlooking the dense jungle, and throws herself off.
Oh, that's incredibly dark.
But here's the critical data point for the glitch frequency we are analyzing. As she dies, her mind is not at peace. It is entirely consumed by a singular, blinding, concentrated hatred for the person who took her money.
A blood oath.
Yes. She swears a blood oath, which is a very real, very potent concept in Southeast Asian spiritualism, that her spirit will not pass on until she exacts physical revenge on the thief.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the spiritual mechanics of a blood oath actually bind the soul to the physical plane.
That's the theory.
But how does a human soul turn into a monster capable of physically ripping through a car roof?
Think of it as spiritual thermodynamics. A soul consumed entirely by rage doesn't just linger, it mutates. Over the years, trapped on that mountain, feeding on the dark energy of desperate gamblers and the isolation of the jungle, her spirit calcified into something monstrous.
That makes sense.
She wasn't just a ghost, she was an apex predator, born of vengeance. And the moment the husband brought that stolen money back to the mountain, the very money that sealed her doom, the trap snapped shut.
Wow.
It transforms the narrative from a random animal attack into a highly precise, spiritually targeted execution. The sudden loss of gas in the car, the isolation. It was all orchestrated to isolate the faithless man.
That adds such a heavy, dark layer of morality to the entire event. It's not just a horror story, it's a terrifying lesson about karmic weight. You think you found free money, but you actually picked up a tracking beacon for a demon.
Exactly.
But you mentioned there were other origin waveforms in the data. What if the husband didn't steal the money? What if the trap was set before they even arrived at the casino?
That brings us to origin hypothesis 2, the witchcraft trap, or the theory of the toil. This requires us to shift our focus away from the husband's past and look strictly at the architectural and spiritual foundation of the Genting Highlands Hotel itself.
The hotel with the whispering wind chimes. I circled that detail in my notes because it felt incredibly specific. It didn't feel like a standard haunted house trope.
It is specific for a very dark reason. According to an investigative text regarding the occult history of haunted Asian hotels cited in our sources, there's a deeply disturbing origin story regarding the early construction days of the Genting Entertainment Complex.
What happened?
Before the casino officially opened its doors to the public, there are persistent, dark allegations that a group of pregnant Vietnamese women were brought to the hotel and placed in specially prepared, isolated rooms.
Prepared how? What was the purpose?
The rooms were completely sensory deprived. Heavy, light-blocking curtains were drawn permanently. There was no natural sunlight whatsoever. The women were kept completely isolated, provided with food and physical comforts. But in every single room, hanging directly from the ceiling, was a set of metallic wind chimes.
That is incredibly eerie. What were they doing to them?
The sources claim that after a period of several months, these women were seen leaving the hotel. They were no longer pregnant, their figures slimmed down.
Okay.
But, and this is the horrifying anomaly, none of them carried a child.
Did it really?
Furthermore, the hotel staff explicitly noted in leaked testimonies that during the entire time these women were housed on that floor, not a single cry of a baby was ever heard in the hallways. The silence was absolute and deeply unnatural.
So where did the babies go?
According to the occult hypothesis, the babies were never meant to be born alive. They were subjected to complex, esoteric black magic rituals while still in the womb. They were cursed, bound, and transformed into toils.
Toils. I've heard that term.
In Southeast Asian folklore, a toil is an infant spirit, often depicted as a small goblin-like creature with green skin, red eyes, and sharp teeth. They are familiars bound to a master, and they require highly specific offerings, often requiring the master to prick their own finger to feed the spirit drops of blood.
I need to push back here for a second, though.
Sir,
You're telling me a multi-billion-dollar casino operation, a massive corporate entity, is relying on the ghosts of unborn babies to rig their roulette tables? How does that even work practically? Wouldn't the sheer volume of spiritual energy required to run a casino just burn out?
well, you have to look at it through the lens of probability manipulation.
Oh.
The theory posits that the spirits of these toils were bound to the wind chimes hanging in the hotel rooms. They were cultivated and trained by high-level occult practitioners employed quietly by the casino's founders.
So they weren't spinning wheels.
Exactly. Their purpose wasn't to physically spin the roulette wheel. Their purpose was to act as spiritual lures and probability filters.
I see.
When the couple checked into the room and the wind chimes were swaying without a breeze and they heard voices saying, "You have good luck," that wasn't a hallucination. That was the toils actively interacting with their auras.
They were grooming them.
Exactly. Think of the toil's luck-draining ability as a spiritual algorithm. They actively manipulate the probability field around the target. They ensure you win massively at first, flooding your brain with dopamine, hooking your psychological reward centers completely.
Right.
And then at the witching hour, midnight, they flip the algorithmic switch. They drain your luck entirely, creating a vacuum that ensures the house takes everything back with interest.
Which perfectly explains the sudden, violent shift in the couple's fortunes. But how does an infant spirit draining your luck connect to a giant blue-faced monster tearing a man's head off on the highway below?
This is where we have to extrapolate on the symbiosis of the supernatural ecosystem on that mountain.
A supernatural ecosystem.
Yeah. If the toils drained their luck and their finances, they forced the couple to flee in the middle of the night. Were the toils working in a coordinated tandem with the female entity on the road?
Oh, like a partnership.
Did the whispers lure the husband into a state of total vulnerability, essentially serving him up as a blood sacrifice to whatever apex predator was waiting at the bottom of the mountain to keep the spiritual energy of the whole operation flowing? It suggests the mountain isn't just haunted, it's a perfectly engineered, predatory farm.
That is genuinely terrifying. The idea that the environment itself is a machine designed to consume you financially first and then physically.
It's bleak.
But you mentioned a third theory, one that removes the ghost element entirely and looks at this through a biological lens.
Yes. Origin Hypothesis 3, the non-human monster. This is perhaps the most radical, yet strangely the most grounded theory we have.
Grounded, really?
It requires us to abandon theology and lean entirely into cryptozoology. We need to look closely, forensically, at the physical evidence left at the crime scene.
You mean the 5 deep finger holes reaching the bone in the victim's abdomen?
Precisely. If we apply rigorous biomechanical logic, a traditional incorporeal ghost, a spirit made of ectoplasm, memory, or residual energy, should not possess the sheer brute physical strength required to punch through human epidermis, dense muscle, sinew, and bone with bare hands.
Yeah, you need leverage for that.
That requires massive PSI, incredible bone density, and leverage. This leads some rogue researchers consulting ancient texts to propose that the creature on the roof was not a ghost at all, but a shanxiao.
A shanxiao. What exactly is that?
It translates roughly to mountain demon. It is a cryptid described in the Shanhai Jing, or the Classic of Mountains and Seas, which is a remarkably ancient Chinese text detailing mythic geography, botany, and beasts.
Okay, so it's an old myth.
The text describes a creature known as a Gan giant. It dwells exclusively in deep, ancient, impenetrable forests.
Like the Karak Highway jungle.
Exactly. It is described as having a vaguely human-like face, abnormally long and powerful arms designed for canopy navigation, and immense striking force, a body covered entirely in thick black hair, and crucially, backward-facing heels.
Backward-facing heels. That is such a bizarre, hyper-specific anatomical detail.
It is a common, recurring motif in global folklore for demonic or unnatural entities, serving as a physical manifestation of their inversion of the natural order.
Right, it just sounds wrong.
But biomechanically, it might suggest a highly specialized evolutionary adaptation for gripping trunks while descending from the canopy head first to ambush prey.
Oh, wow.
The Shanhai Jing also notes one more chilling behavioral trait of the shanxiao. It is known to pull its lips back in a horrifying human-like smile at people right before it attacks.
So what does this all mean for the forensic reality of the case? Are we looking at a genuine cryptid attack?
It's possible.
Because if it's a massive, undiscovered ape, a primate-like cryptid living in the dense Pahang rainforest, that perfectly explains the physical carnage. It explains the mechanical ability to rip a man's head off and tear open his abdomen. It's not magic, it's just an apex predator doing what it evolved to do.
Exactly.
But wait, if it's an ape, why did the wife explicitly describe seeing a woman in a white dress with a blue face?
This is where we have to analyze the psychological phenomenon of trauma filtering.
Trauma filtering.
Is the wife an unreliable witness? It is highly, almost certainly probable. Consider her psychological state. She is stranded in the pitch black, financially ruined, isolated from the world, and she has been sitting in a metal box listening to her husband being actively, loudly consumed for hours.
She's completely broken by that point.
When she finally steps out and looks back, her brain is fracturing under the weight of sheer, unadulterated trauma.
Yeah.
The human mind, when confronted with an incomprehensible, paradigm-shattering horror, like a massive, undiscovered hominid ripping her husband apart, will often refuse to process the raw visual data.
It just rejects it.
Instead, it desperately overlays a culturally familiar template onto the image just to survive the moment. She sees a monster, and her brain instantly categorizes it as a traditional regional ghost.
Like a Pontianak or a vengeful spirit in white.
Because that is somehow easier for her mind to conceptualize than the biological reality of the beast. Her brain edited the footage in real time.
That makes a disturbing amount of sense. Her mind essentially applied a ghost filter over a real-world monster so she wouldn't completely lose her sanity.
It's a survival mechanism.
But as fascinating as that is, it brings us to the massive controversy surrounding this entire event. Because the moment we start treating this as a verifiable physical incident, the historical data begins to actively resist us.
It really does.
Let's look at controversy 1, the time-space contradictions.
Right. If we are tracking a glitch, we have to look at the timestamps. The primary narrative, the version burned into the cultural memory of Malaysia, usually dates the event strictly to 1974, though some variations say 1978. But when we pull the hard, indisputable historical engineering records of the Malaysian government, a massive discrepancy emerges.
What's the discrepancy?
The construction of the modern Karak Highway did not begin until 1970, and the tunnel and main thoroughfares were not officially open to the general public until 1977.
Wait, so if the lore insists it happened in 1974, they literally couldn't have been driving on the Karak Highway as we conceptualize it today.
Exactly. If the 1974 date is accurate, they would have been driving their Volkswagen through an active, highly dangerous, unfinished construction site.
Which seems unlikely.
Or, more likely, they were taking the old, winding, treacherous mountain roads that predated the highway entirely. And over time, as the story was passed down, the collective memory simply migrated the location of the trauma to the more famous newer road.
So does the timeline contradiction debunk the whole thing? Is it just a myth that got attached to a scary new road?
Many skeptics think so.
Or, let's look at this through the lens of our glitch frequency. What if the Karak Highway itself acts as a focal point?
Go on.
Think of the mountain's geography as an acoustic funnel. The trauma of the old mountain passes, brutal accidents that inevitably occurred during the massive construction project of the new highway, the sheer isolation of the jungle.
A convergence of energy.
What if all that creates a frequency that people tune into, regardless of the exact year? The timeline doesn't match because the trauma is nonlinear.
That is a very sophisticated ontological way to look at it. You are suggesting the highway is a spatial glitch.
Yeah.
A place where the barrier between objective, chronological reality and subjective, localized terror is exceptionally thin. Which leads perfectly into controversy 2, the vanished files.
Yes, the cover-up. Because if a man was brutally decapitated on a major roadway and the police found the body, there absolutely has to be a paper trail.
A coroner's report.
A police blotter, anything.
And according to the older generation in Malaysia, there was a paper trail. This is perhaps the most compelling piece of the puzzle.
People remember it.
If you speak to citizens who lived through the 1970s and 80s, an astonishing number of them will swear on their lives that they read about this exact incident in the major national newspapers.
So it was published.
They aren't recalling a rumor, they clearly remember the bold headlines. They remember reading the gruesome forensic details over their morning coffee. They remember the panic it caused.
But if you go looking for those articles today...
Nothing. Zero. Absolute silence.
Completely gone.
There is no digital footprint, no microfiche entries in the National Archives, no physical clippings that anyone can produce from a scrapbook. The files have completely surgically vanished from the historical record.
Which instantly breeds massive conspiracy theories. I mean, why would a government actively erase a murder from the public record?
The most prevalent theory, and I want to pause here to state explicitly for our listeners, that we are impartially reporting the theories found in our source material.
Yes, absolutely.
We are not endorsing any political stance, accusation, or agenda against the Malaysian government.
Right.
But the theory is sheer economic preservation.
They needed to protect Genting.
Yes. You have to understand the macroeconomics of the region. Genting Highlands is a massive, multi-billion-dollar economic engine.
It's huge.
It relies entirely, 100%, on tourism, on people feeling safe enough to pack their families into cars and travel up that remote mountain road.
Right.
If the national newspapers are running front page, police-verified stories about a flesh-eating cryptid or a vengeful, decapitating ghost actively hunting tourists on the only access road,
The tourism industry would collapse overnight.
the panic would be absolute. The financial incentive to suppress the story, to classify the police files, and to quietly, systematically scrub the archives is undeniably massive.
The logistics of doing that in the 1970s, before the internet, going to every local paper and confiscating the plates, it's staggering.
It would take a lot of effort.
But what if they aren't covering it up just to protect casino revenue? What if they are covering it up because they discovered something they fundamentally, institutionally cannot explain?
Ontological shock.
Exactly, we're talking about ontological shock. If you admit to the public that there is a physical monster with backward heels tearing people apart, or a ghost actively enforcing karmic debt in the physical world, how do you govern a population that knows the laws of physics are broken? You bury it to prevent mass hysteria.
Both the economic and the ontological hypotheses for the suppression of data are highly compelling. But here is the flaw in any cover-up.
What's that?
Suppression is rarely 100% successful. Human error always leaves a trace. Because we still have leaks, we have evidence that managed to slip through the cracks of the blackout. Let's move to the evidence check.
Yes, let's look at the actual breadcrumbs left behind by the people who were there.
Discussion point 1, the testimony of Officer Aman. In the deep lore surrounding this event, there is a recurring named figure. A retired police officer, often specifically described as being of mixed Chinese and Dayak descent. His name is consistently given as Aman.
And he claims he was actually there that night.
He claims he was a young patrolman on duty. He asserts he was one of the first responding officers who approached the stranded yellow Volkswagen.
Wow.
And his testimony is crucial because he serves as the whistleblower for the cover-up. He states unequivocally that the official, unredacted reports of that night, the raw forensic details, the blood spatter analysis, the traumatized eyewitness accounts from the officers who saw the carnage are not destroyed.
Where are they?
They are locked away in a highly classified vault at the Benton Police Headquarters.
Why lock them in a vault? I mean, if it was just a grisly murder by a human serial killer, you investigate it. Why classify it at that level?
Because, according to Oman, the event terrified the police force itself. Multiple highly trained, armed officers witnessed something that fundamentally broke their professional and personal understanding of reality.
The trauma filter failed them.
The carnage was so unnatural, the physical impossibility of the wound so bizarre, that it could not be filed as a standard homicide. It couldn't be processed by the legal system. It had to be buried simply to maintain psychological order within the ranks of the police.
And Aman isn't the only leak. The most famous piece of suppressed evidence is the photo.
Discussion point 2, the legendary black and white photograph. This is the absolute holy grail of Malaysian urban legends.
Yeah, I saw this mentioned everywhere.
Alongside the memories of newspaper articles, countless people recall seeing a specific, horrifying photograph printed in the press before the media blackout occurred.
I've read descriptions of this photo from the Wattpad sources and the translated YouTube comments, and the consistency of the descriptions is chilling.
It really is.
It was allegedly taken by one of the responding officers, someone with incredible, almost insane nerve to snap a picture while that thing was still on the roof.
Hard to imagine doing that.
It's universally described as a grainy, high-contrast, blurry black and white image. In the foreground, you can see the slick, dark, metallic surface of the car roof.
The VW.
Spread across it is a chaotic pile of what clearly looks like human internal organs. And crouching over it, caught in the harsh, blinding glare of a police flashlight or a heavy camera flashbulb, is a terrifying, distorted silhouette.
The creature.
A female figure, her proportions slightly wrong, looking back over her shoulder directly at the camera lens.
The existence of this photograph is a massive point of contention in paranormal investigation circles.
Because no one can find it now.
Right. Is it the ultimate example of the Mandela effect? A false memory implanted by a highly compelling, culturally pervasive story, spreading like a virus through a population until everyone genuinely believes they saw it.
That happens.
Or was the photo real, physically published for one brief morning cycle, and then systematically destroyed by the authorities, leaving only the traumatized memory behind?
I mean, the fact that so many disparate sources, separated by geography and generation, describe the exact same lighting composition and posture of the entity in the photograph strongly suggests it may have actually existed in the physical domain.
But even if we trust the collective memory of the photo, the details of what the creature was actually doing to the husband vary wildly depending on which source text you are reading.
Which brings us to discussion point 3, analyzing the details of death or eyewitness discrepancies.
When you apply a rigorous forensic investigative lens to the source texts, the consistency of the creature's behavior falls apart.
How so?
One source insists the ghost was exclusively devouring brains, using immense grip strength to crack the skull open like a walnut.
Okay, gruesome.
Another source is adamant it was a vampire-like entity ignoring the flesh and purely sucking blood from the severed neck. And yet another describes a beast violently tearing flesh and haphazardly scattering organs across the highway.
So, what does this all mean for the credibility of the narrative? Do these discrepancies prove it's just a made-up story? Just regional variations on a myth where storytellers add their own favorite flavor of gore?
That is the standard skeptical conclusion, yes. The unreliability of traumatized witnesses, combined with decades of oral storytelling, naturally mutates the details. It's the telephone game with a horror story.
Sure, that makes sense.
But if we apply the glitch frequency methodology, we have to consider a much more terrifying alternative.
Which is?
What if all the accounts are entirely accurate?
Wait, how could they all be accurate?
What if the discrepancies aren't errors in human memory, but evidence of plurality?
Wait, you're saying there wasn't just one thing on the car roof?
If we entertain the cryptozoological hypothesis, the Shanjiao, the mountain demon, we have to look at biology.
Okay, biology.
Apex primate predators rarely hunt entirely alone in a dense jungle environment. They often operate in familial units or hunting packs.
Oh my God.
Could the yellow Volkswagen have been swarmed? Was the wife sitting in the dark, hearing the sounds of multiple entities?
A pack of them?
One carrying the flesh, a juvenile extracting blood, another cracking the skull. The sheer volume of noise she reported, the intense rhythmic vibration shaking the entire heavy chassis of the car. It might point to a feeding frenzy by a pack, rather than a lone hunter.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if we assume the Karak Highway is a focal point for this kind of supernatural or cryptid activity, if it's an environment that supports a pack of apex nightmares, we have to look at the road's larger resume.
It has quite a history.
And Karak is infamous for other recurring anomalies. The headless ghost isn't an isolated incident, it's just the loudest, most famous symptom.
Precisely. The highway exhibits multiple chronic symptoms of a systemic failure in reality. It is a highly localized breakdown of physics and time.
Let's dedicate some real time to these corroborating glitches, because they paint a terrifying picture of the environment. First, we have to look at the 1990 crash.
The big one.
This is historical fact. A horrific collision involving multiple vehicles where 17 people died in a twisted mass of metal.
A tragedy.
Many investigators believe that massive, sudden release of violent kinetic energy and human terror permanently scarred the geographic location. It acted as a catalyst that amplifies all the dark energy there, thinning the veil. It's like a wound in the earth that never healed.
A permanent scar.
And from that wound, we get the recurring localized glitches, like the phantom yellow Volkswagen.
This one is fascinating.
This is a separate legend entirely, but the connection is undeniable. Drivers report driving late at night and coming up behind a yellow VW Beetle driving agonizingly slowly in the fast lane.
Right.
You get frustrated, you flash your lights, you pull out, accelerate, and overtake it. You look in your rearview mirror, it's falling behind in the mist.
Normal so far.
But 10 minutes later, further down the road, there it is again, right in front of you. Driving slowly, you overtake it again. 10 minutes later, it's in front of you again.
It's an impossible infinite spatial loop.
And the sources say, if you manage to look inside the window as you pass, there is absolutely no one in the driver's seat. It's an empty, autonomous shell.
It's bait.
It's baiting cars into passing it repeatedly, luring drivers into frustration, increasing their speed on blind curves, and ultimately causing a fatal crash.
It acts as an environmental hazard masquerading as a vehicle. It is the highway generating a trap using the iconography of its most famous tragedy.
Exactly. And the highway generates other echoes, too. There is the deeply tragic legend of the lost schoolboy.
That one is heartbreaking.
Drivers report seeing a young boy in a uniform wandering the gravel shoulder of the pitch-black highway, desperately waving down cars, asking, "Have you seen my mother?"
And if you stop,
If you are compassionate enough to stop and help him, you realize the horrific truth as you get closer. He is a residual echo of a fatal crash. His mother was thrown from the vehicle upon impact, and he remained trapped in the passenger seat, the shattered windshield glass permanently embedded in his eyes. He is stuck in a localized time loop of his final terrifying moments, forever looking for a mother who is already dead.
it's just so profoundly sad.
Then you have the localized manifestation of the Pontianak, the classic flying female vampire of Malay folklore said to harbor immense burning hatred from dying in childbirth.
A staple of the region's lore.
On Karak, she appears as a beautiful woman hitchhiking on the side of the road, preying specifically on lone male drivers. If they pick her up, she guides them off the road and tears their organs apart. The highway seems to actively manifest cultural fears into physical threats.
It uses what you know against you.
But perhaps the most chilling anomaly, the one that truly points to a breakdown in time itself, is the radio call.
A predictive call.
During a late-night broadcast, a local Kuala Lumpur radio station received a live call from a deeply depressed, panicked man. He calmly explained to the overnight DJ that he was driving on the Karak Highway. He had lost control on a curve, and his car had plunged deep into a dark ravine.
Okay.
He detailed in agonizing clarity how he watched his parents, his wife, and his children die in the twisted metal. And then he told the DJ the saddest part, he watched himself die.
Watched himself die.
The line went dead. The next morning, the news reported a tragic crash matching those exact details at that exact location. A family wiped out.
Wow.
But here's the glitch. When the DJ rushed to replay the magnetic tape of the call from the night before, there was nothing but eerie, static silence. The call had never recorded.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are looking at is not a series of isolated, spooky ghost stories to be told around a campfire.
Definitely not.
These are symptoms of an environment where reality, routinely, predictably, and violently breaks down. The timeline loops, physical objects manifest from trauma, and temporal boundaries blur to the point where a man can report his own death before the authorities even find his body.
It's a localized breakdown of the laws of physics.
Yes, the Karak Highway is not just a road paved over dirt, it is a conduit. When you synthesize all the findings we've unpacked today, the karmic debt and the blood oaths, the witchcraft traps and probability manipulation, the impossible biology of cryptid apex predators, the timeline skips, the phantom vehicles, and the predictive radio broadcasts,
It all points to one thing.
a deeply chilling conclusion forms.
The true horror of the Karak Highway doesn't lie in literal traditional ghosts in white sheets. It lies in the highway itself.
It is an indelible blood-stained frequency. The road acts as a massive spatial glitch. It operates precisely like a magnetic audio tape that has been recorded over too many times.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
The new audio is there, but the old violent audio keeps bleeding through the static. It traps guilt, grief, extreme physical trauma, and spatial anomalies in a permanent geographical loop.
And the drivers are caught in it.
And when a driver travels down that road, especially at night, isolated, fatigued, their psychological defenses lowered, they become the needle on the record player. They translate the blocked waveform. The highway's trauma intrudes on their reality.
It forces you, the observer, to experience the echoes of the violence it has absorbed over decades.
Which leaves us with a final, very practical thought for you to consider.
For the listener.
Yes, I want you to think about this the next time you find yourself behind the wheel of a car. Think about the times you've driven alone on a dark, isolated stretch of road late at night.
We've all been there.
The radio fades into static. The only light is your high beams. You know the exact feeling I'm talking about. The sudden, inexplicable drop in the ambient temperature inside the cabin.
The chill.
The irrational sense of dread that pools in your stomach, making your heart race for no logical reason. The sudden, overwhelming urge to check your rearview mirror, terrified of what might be sitting quietly in the back seat, or what might be keeping pace with your car just beyond the tree line.
Yeah.
What if that fear isn't just your imagination? What if it isn't just a biological byproduct of fatigue, caffeine, and dancing shadows?
What if it's real?
What if in that exact moment, your brain is acting as an organic antenna? What if you are tuning into a blocked waveform left behind by a tragedy so immense, so violent, that reality is desperately trying and failing to filter it out?
You're tuning into the frequency.
You aren't imagining the terror. You are simply passing through it.
Don't count the sounds from your car roof. Frequency over. Goodbye.